Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad. Tehami. In today's program, we are going to talk about the situation as it is developing, unfolding in the Middle East in the wake of the assassination of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah and the relentless aggression on the part of Israeli regime. Firstly, since 7th of October, it has unleashed a reign of terror, that brutal aggression against the innocent people in Gaza. On the second front, we talk about Israel's aggression in the southern part of Lebanon that has resulted so far in the killing of hundreds of people and the displacement of over 1 million people. That happens to be 1/5 of Lebanon's population. At the same time, Israel's foreign minister has ruled out any possibility of a ceasefire, saying until Hezbollah is disarmed and moved to the north of the Litani River. At the same time, we have seen Hezbollah's deputy chief Sheikh Naim Qasim, who has said that we are quite ready if Israel wants a ground incursion. The resistance forces are ready for that. At the same time, we have also seen a very important statement coming from the acting Prime Minister of Lebanon, Najib Mikati, saying Lebanon, while still committed to an immediate ceasefire, the government is prepared to deploy army in the south of the country, unquote. At the same time, US President Joe Biden has said all-out war in the Middle East has to be avoided, with the Pentagon spokesperson warning Iran that if any of the American interests or the personnel are targeted, the US will take every necessary measure to defend its people. At the same time, Iran's foreign minister says the Lebanon and fighters in the Palestinian territories have the capability and strength to defend themselves. We have also seen a major statement coming from Pope Francis saying Israeli military attacks on Lebanon go beyond morality. This situation that is unfolding in the Middle East, what are going to be the ramifications of this Israeli aggression, especially when we talk about the recent assassination of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah and the kind of statements coming from the leadership of Hezbollah as well as the foreign minister of Israel. In the studio for that, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Manzoor Afridi. He is foreign affairs expert, also Dean Social Sciences at the International Islamic University in Islamabad. Dr. Afridi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Ahmad Zaki, is Middle East expert. Mr. Zaki, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Afridi. When we talk about this brutal aggression, firstly we saw against the innocent people in Gaza and now towards Lebanon, with the Israeli foreign minister altogether ruling out the possibility of a ceasefire, saying will continue and it can be only done when Hezbollah is completely disarmed. Where do you see this situation heading? Do you see this particular situation that started after 7th of October, that Israel unleashed its reign of terror on the people of Gaza? There were speculations, there were fears, there was a threat of the war widening in the broader region. Is that what is happening now?
That is the consequences of all the actions of Israel while it was taking at the start of this war. I mean, in the last year in October or in November, I think the world leaders, they were not very much concerned about the Israel's aggression. If they really wanted to have no to the war and to stop Israel from aggression, then it was very much possible to end the hostilities or at least to have a ceasefire. But I think United Nations Security Council and particularly the United States and its allies or friends, they were not entrusted to stop Israel from this aggression. We
So
know
why were
that
they not interested? Dr. Afridi, we've been talking at length about this particular role and the responsibility of the U.S. as being one of the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, the allies of the U.S., and now the UN has the responsibility to stop that aggression on the part of Israel that has been going relentlessly since 7th of October. To what purpose that unwillingness on the part of the U.S. and its allies does it serve?
I think two things are responsible. One, that was the bilateral relationship, which is very much strong between United States and Israel. At any cost, they want to save and defend Israel. And we have seen that within the United States, if there is government of the Republicans or the Democrats, so they are at this on the same page as far as Israel is concerned. I think we have seen in the Trump's era, half Trump was concerned about the Israel. Even Trump had declared the Baitul Muqaddas or Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. There was outrage from the Muslim countries and from the public of Muslim states that no, don't change the capital. But still, Trump was committed to stand side by side with Israel. Now we are seeing in this Democrats government, I mean in the Joe Biden, nothing has changed. I mean, as far as the U.S. policy towards Israel is concerned, or in broader context,
the U.S. policy, this is a very important
please.
point that you've just made. When we talk about there hasn't been any sort of a difference when we talk about the policy of the U.S. administrations vis-a-vis Israel, whether they be Democrats or the Republicans, it hasn't changed. You also mentioned that of Donald Trump's era when Jerusalem was being made the capital of Israel, and also now under the Biden administration. But when we talk about the situation as far as the Gazans are concerned, the Palestinian people are concerned, don't you think the situation under the Democrats as compared to the Republicans has worsened?
Yeah, no doubt. If we compare with the previous administration of Trump, so now it is very much devastating, right? I think it is also the inability of the Joe Biden. That's why we have seen very hard debates between the Trump and Joe Biden, and later on with the Kamala Harris, right? And that's why most of the people within the United States, they are supporting Trump as far as the U.S. policy or especially foreign policy is concerned. So I was pointing before that that is the one thing. And second, I think the proxy enemies, that card is also very much important in Middle East. At any stage of time, United States has rivalries with 1, 2, 3, or maybe more of the states in the Middle East. Nowadays, if we see, so the biggest in this regard, that is the Iran. So if Iran is supporting Lebanon or the Hamas or any other organization, maybe Houthis or whatever, so United States will not tolerate. So that is one of the reasons that United States is not going to stop Israel from aggression, which is very much unfortunate, because this recklessness, this ruthlessness from the Israel, right? So I think mankind can't consider it in this so-called civilized world.
That's a very important point that you've just mentioned here regarding those groups which are supposedly being backed by Iran. It's intolerable for the U.S. in order to tolerate those groups if they are doing anything that goes against the interest of Israel, right? So that relentless and unflinching support in the defense of Israel as far as the U.S. is concerned. I'll come back to you to take your deeper view regarding these particular groups and what could be the possibility when we talk about all the fronts of a war that might go into the wider region. Let me bring in Mr. Ahmad Zaki into the discussion also. Mr. Zaki, now the situation, how do you look at the overall situation as it is developing, especially when we talk about that assassination, the recent assassination of Hezbollah's leader, Hassan Nasrallah?
As you know, brother, the conflict of Israel and Hezbollah is not started in this month. It was started since October last year. with the solidarity of the Gazan people against the Israeli occupation. So it
Right.
was like it was low intensity kind of a war conflict, and now Israel is intensified to make a point that they want to like eliminate the power of Hezbollah, which is kind of unrealistic goal. That as he have set the same goal for Hamas and still did not able to eliminate Hamas from Gaza, and the same allegations, the same standards he want to use and continue to assault the public in Lebanon. So the consequences will be like a devastating, particularly for Lebanon and Lebanese civilian people. There will be a lot of blood for the coming days and months, and it will continue for that. Well, on the other hand, they will not be able to eliminate, as they are claiming, the Israeli army and the Israeli political elite. But it will always create a more and more a terror attack from both sides, and now it will involve more in Iraq, and consequently, it will also affect the Yemen, as we have already seen today, the Israeli attack on Yemen.
Right, Mr. Zaki, let's bring in these some important statements we have seen coming from Israel's foreign minister ruling out any ceasefire, as you already mentioned in your take, that Israel, just as it actually aimed to eliminate Palestinian resistance group Hamas, likewise it's actually aiming to do the same thing with the Lebanon's resistance group Hezbollah. Now, when we talk about this particular ruling out of a ceasefire on the part of Israeli officials, firstly, what does that basically depict? Do you think after the recent high-profile assassinations that Israel claims to have done, first when we talk about Ismail Haniyeh and now Hassan Nasrallah, Israel seems to be emboldened. It has actually emboldened the Netanyahu's administration.
Yes, it's emboldened. That's very clear with the support of American government, with unconditional support of American government. And this is kind of a similar, we can see the stories, the history is repeating itself. We have seen the similar scenario with the Hitler in the Second World War. He have started occupation of the neighboring countries in Europe, claiming that they have violated their previous agreements and trying to unify the German ethnic into that area, claiming that they have a threat to the other European nationalists. And UK and France, which was on that time kind of a particular powers in Europe, they ignored it and by obesing the Hitler. A similar case is going on in Middle East. Now, Americans are facing Israel to create tension in Middle East, and that can escalate to involvement of one of the major powers in Middle East, particularly in Iran, and that could be out of control. It will not serve for anyone's interest, including the USA, and that's what Netanyahu wants, and he spread his messages to skip the internal political crisis and the legal cases against him. So he will do whatever he wants with the support of America.
There has been aerial bombardment on the part of Israelis on Lebanon, resulting into the killing of hundreds of people. There is a possibility of a ground invasion into Lebanon also. The deputy head of Hezbollah has said that we are ready if the Israelis want a ground incursion. The resistance forces are ready for that. And he's also said that we will win just as we won in our confrontation with Israel in 2006. Likewise, at the same time, the acting Prime Minister of Lebanon has also talked about that Lebanon is still committed to a ceasefire. He's also again referring to that very ceasefire of 2006 to which this deputy head of Hezbollah has referred to. But he has talked about that particular instance in terms of victory. And when we talk about Lebanese acting Prime Minister, he says that we are committed to that ceasefire and the UN resolution, the concerned UN resolution would be implemented. Still, we can deploy army in the south. How do you compare both of these statements?
As you know, that Israelis will do for the ground invasion as they are already prepared, and they started already the small small armies to send the neighboring villages in the southern parts of Lebanon, and this is what the Lebanon is going to face. Definitely, there will be a ground war between Hezbollah and Israel. I don't know how much Lebanon government will respond the Israeli aggression against the Lebanese people. Will they stand side by side with the Hezbollah and fight against the Israeli government, or they will still remain as they are still remaining seeking the diplomatic solution, which is not going to be listened in the UN or the UN Security Council as long as the American support is firm for the Israel. And this is the typical tactics that they use against the Gaza. Americans, they prohibited to go for Rafah. They go against the American will. That shows that American political system is being hijacked by the Israeli politicians. No matter how much the Americans want to stay away from the conflict of the Middle East, the Israeli government will drag them down to that conflict. And we are expecting it will spread to Iran.
Right. So let's talk about Mr. Najib Mikati. Let me quote him when he specifically talks about that resolution, UNSC resolution of 1701. He says, "We in Lebanon ready to implement 1701, and immediately upon the implementation of the ceasefire, Lebanon is ready to send the Lebanese army to the area south of the Litani River and to carry out its full duties in coordination with the UN peacekeepers." Unquote. You in this take have talked about, it would be really important to see whether if there happens to be a ground invasion on the part of Israelis, whether the troops of the Lebanese army are going to support Hezbollah. That is exactly what you said, if I got that correctly. So by looking at this particular statement, that by Lebanese Prime Minister talking specifically of that UNSC resolution, doesn't that talk about disarming of Hezbollah and moving them to the north of the Litani River? So in that sense, the possibility of Lebanese troops assisting Hezbollah would be completely ruled out.
Obviously, it will root out as long as they are still listening the UN resolutions, and UN resolution will not be binded by the Israel because of the American help. They will never listen any UN resolution goes against the interests of Israel or even bounding their powers, that they should not go for ground invasion of Lebanon. They will always have their loopholes with the support of American expertise in the UN, and also American politicians will 100% stand for Israel. On that sense, it's the Lebanon government which is going to lose the war, either side, whether they are going to support American interests in the Middle East and they will sacrifice their people, or they will stand with the Hezbollah to defend equally with their people against the aggression of Israel. And that is not going to likely happen because Saudi Arabia and the Saudi family are funding the government of Lebanon, and still they are not going against Israel hardly.
Right. Your point is well taken, Mr. Zaki. I'll come back to you. Your point is, I have received your point well. Dr. Afridi, let me take this particular point to Dr. Afridi. Firstly, after the recent assassinations, also that particular speech or address that is being made by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations General Assembly, and the kind of body language that he carried himself with, the kind of the confidence that apparently seemed to be with him at that particular point in time, also saying that Israel's long arm can actually target the tyrants, quote unquote, in Iran and anywhere in the Middle East. And after that, we saw that assassination happening. We have seen that resolve of revenge on the part of Iranians. Firstly, hasn't it completely emboldened? Now there is a possibility of ground invasion as far as Lebanon is concerned on the part of Israeli forces after these two recent assassinations, that has actually emboldened with that particular speech the confidence that it actually showed to the world. And on the other hand, the resolve of vengeance on the part of Iranians? Where do you see the damage being incurred more?
You rightly said that the Israel's prime minister was very much confident, and it was very much clear from his body language what wanted. He wanted to convey to the world. Right? I mean that he was confident enough to show more aggression, to do more attacks, not only on Palestine but also elsewhere in the world. Maybe Iran, maybe Lebanon, maybe Yemen, but now it was Lebanon we have seen, right? So as far as the ground invasion is concerned, I think it's also easy for Israel, and Israel can do it, right? Just to maybe for more destabilization of the situation in Middle East, right? So nobody will stop Israel, because for the last 1 year, the actions, the steps taken by Israel, the whole world is just seeing it, right? And it was just the world leaders, international community, major powers, the UNSC, they are just calling it for, to stop it, for de-escalation, for ceasefire. But Israel is not listening to anyone. So the ground invasion, the ground incursion, there's also easy for Israel, and it can do it. As far as the question, the point is concerned, that of course then the revenge or the vengeful acts from Iran, it can also take place, no doubt. But the destruction, where it will be more, I think that will depend on the future situation. That will depend on the other states, taking sides of Israel. As far as the technology is concerned, so Iran is also very much capable to hurt Israel, to hurt the interests of Israel in Middle East. But the technology-wise, Israel is also very much powerful, and it has showed now, right, that it can hit the anti-Israel interests anywhere in the Middle East. So there was a bit, we can say, tranquility in the Middle East after the Arab Spring. So in the Arab Spring, I mean, for almost 7-8 years, we have seen so much destruction in the Middle East. I mean, in Libya, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Yemen, in Syria, and other countries. But for the last 4 or 5 years, we see that now situation is going to be more worrisome. And for the last 1 year, especially between Israel and Palestine, and broadly in the entire Middle East, so it is now very much disturbing. So as on many shows here talking through this platform, on many occasions I had said that this war, it will cross the boundaries of many countries. So now it is happening. So it's not only limited to the Israel or Palestine. Now it is also in Lebanon, it is also in Yemen, it is also in Iran. If we see the martyrdom of Ismail Hania, now the martyrdom of Hassan Nasrallah, right? So even it can then move beyond these countries. So another a kind of Arab Spring we can say, and then the proxy wars, and then the other states' involvement in it, the Muslim states or the Russia, China seeking their own interests. So very much worrisome. If the world leaders, they really want to have stability over there, to save the humanity and also to save their own interests, so they have to stop the Israel's aggression. They have to take some concrete steps for the de-escalation of this war, the end, elimination of this genocide.
Right. Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, a foreign affairs expert, has joined us on the phone line. Dr. Shabana, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. How are you looking at the situation developing in the Middle East from that very address by the Prime Minister Netanyahu at the UNGA, and later on the assassination of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, and now a possibility of ground invasion on the part of Israeli forces into Lebanon, with the deputy head of Hezbollah saying they are ready to fight Israel?
Well, as you have said, Tehami Sab, the situation is very complex and critical at the same time. Complexity on the one hand is also defining the warfare, the firepower that is being used by the Israel, and as has been said by my colleague, Israel does have an edge over the technology and the warfare techniques they are using. But unfortunately, the morality of and the questioning of the international human rights law that has been put at stake. So this is a big question mark on that. Israel, if it tries to, and if most probably they will try to cross into the other boundaries, specifically Lebanon and the others. But the problem is that it may also entail the in enlarging the whole avenues of the warfare theater that is being launched there. So this is going to put the whole of the Middle East stability into question. And we also know that Middle East is, and specifically this area, has been home to many wars. There has been the Syrian issues, there are the Yemen issues, there is a tense relations between the Iran and some of the other partners, the Saudi Arabia and the Yemen. And so it is quite a complex situation. So what we are seeing is that it is, on the one hand, there has been talks of having the peace corridors, and the peace talks like being stressed by the U.S. and some other states. But unfortunately, it seems that they are waiting for the total destruction of the people on ground, and then they can want to dictate the peace at their own terms.
What is the way forward? Is there any role, any sort of international organization, any regional bloc, the mediation efforts at the time when there was brutal aggression on the part of Israelis going on against the people in Gaza? That hasn't stopped, and they have opened up a new front. Mr. Zaki already in his take talking about this particular confrontation between Hezbollah and Israelis going on since 7th of October, but with low intensity. But the situation is getting dangerously intense now. What's the way forward? Or do you see this particular conflict widening even further into the region?
Please repeat. There was a distortion on the voice.
I think unfortunately we have lost the connection with Miss Shabana. Miss Shabana, can you hear me, please?
Yes, please. I'm online.
Okay, so Mr. Zaki, this question is to Miss Shabana. When we talk about what's the way forward, there were mediation efforts on the part of, with the mediation of Qatar and Egypt as far as the Israeli aggression against the people in Gaza is concerned, but those negotiations led to no fruition. With this particular new front, from low intensity to worsening situation with Lebanon, where do you see the situation heading? Do you see this particular conflict going deeper, further into the region?
I really feel that it is going to be more polarization in the region. And at the global level, the way forward has been that the UN Security Council members have to assert if there can be a resolution in case of the Al-Qaeda and the war on terror. Why can't there be a resolution and a commitment on the part of the great powers, specifically the U.S. and others, to go and, and stop this war at the moment? Because even if they are in favor of Israel, okay, according to them, but the fact is that they have to be a part of some sort of a peace arrangement. It should not be the forced peace. It should be the peace that has already been recognized by the UN resolutions. And so this is one thing. Another is on the regional level. I really feel that although if you look at the, the videos that have come out about the PM of the Israel who was speaking there, the seats were empty. Even he referred to the Saudis as their partner, but then the camera shows the Saudis delegation seats were empty. So most of the people had walked out. It was basically the galleries that were filled up by their lobbyists that they were cheering for him. So this is number two. And it also shows that the regional actors, because as I said, of their earlier, own tense relations with one another or across the board, they are not in a position to take a decisive step to control Israel on the one hand, or to manage the affairs of the other actors involved in this whole conflict. And the third is at the homeland. I feel primarily feel that, the civil society and the people whose families or the men are taken in custody of the Hamas in Israel, they have come up very strong against the whole initiatives, the anti-human initiatives of their regime. So this is something it's going to swell up more and more. And I think what he has done, as an analyst, I can see is the regime is doing is just to justify and to gain the lost popularity on their home front, that look, we are doing all we can, and just give us the time and we will be having the victory. So this is a sort of the chessboard I can imagine that is being played there.
Right, Ms. Shabana, when we talk about those seats turning out to be empty, majority of the Muslim states walking out during that particular address of Benjamin Netanyahu, of course it was quite a huge symbolic significance, but does it make any difference on the policy when we talk about the US role and responsibility towards the situation in the Middle East is concerned?
I primarily, honestly, I feel that on the policy level, it will not, on the ground. On morality level, like the US has changed its stance from just saying that the Israel has to be defended to the other stances that have been coming up, that the Israel has to negotiate. There needs to be the talk. So maximum that will be the, one can imagine in future.
So what about this particular statement, the warning by the Pentagon spokesperson, Major General Patrick Ryder, to Iran, that he warns Iran that Iran might exploit this particular situation in the wake of that assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, and if it does so, the US will take every measure to defend its personnel. How do you look at that statement? What sort of a warning is that?
It's a very, very strong, you can say, a message that's been delivering from the U.S. highest strategic person or a player. But I must say again that Iran has been very calculative. They have been very rational and very careful in coming out of the response, direct response of what in Israel has been inflicting upon them, whether they're, some sort of the of government allies or whatever. So Iran, they're trying to, in fact, they're trying to warn, but they're also it reflects that the U.S. and Israel are very much afraid and are very much anxious that Iran may strike them even bigger.
So if Iran strikes, there could be a possibility after the Ismail Haniyeh's assassination, and then now after Hassan Nasrallah's assassination, there has been a resolve on the part of the top leadership of Iran that these assassinations would be responded. Now, I've got a list of people from Hezbollah, from Hamas, also some Iranian officials that have been taken down as far as Israel is concerned. Hassan Nasrallah being the latest of all of them. It's Hassan Nasrallah, Ibrahim Qubaisi, Ibrahim Anil, Ahmad Wahibi, Fuad Shukr, and Muhammad Nasir, Talib Abdullah, Muhammad Daif, Ismail Haniyeh, Saleh Al-Aruri. It's a long list. So when we talk about this confrontation, this conflict between the two, where the damage has been accrued more, and where and when can we expect, if any sort of response on the part of Iranians, and in what form that could likely be happening?
I feel the list is very long, and I think it is the same in all the antagonistic actions of those who are in power. Like what has been happening in case of the Kashmir, it goes back to the 60 years. The same is in the case of Palestine and the other states, those who are in a conflicting parties. But the resolve will always be there. I'm not saying that it will be militaristic all the time. It may come and be innovative in another ways. There is a time, we are not living in a time, or even the earlier times, you cannot suppress the people will and their right to live in secure life. So this is what is happening. And Iran, I think that they know how to react, and they will react very carefully. What I see is at the moment, Iran, it doesn't look like wants a direct action or a one-to-one conflict with Israel. What they are going to do is they are going to be a third-party zone where they will aid and support the conflict as long as it can so that the Israel's energies can be drained.
That is exactly what Iran's foreign minister has said, that the resistance groups in Lebanon and the Palestinian territories have got the capability to defend themselves. That is exactly, if I'm correctly getting you, Dr. Shabana, that you have also said.
I agree with you. I agree with
Dr. Shabana Fayyaz, foreign affairs expert, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Zaki, now the role and the responsibility of the United States of America, relentless support to Israel since 7th of October. We have seen the supply of weapons, that aid also, but at the same time, the US President Joe Biden says that all-out war must be avoided. White House spokesperson John Kirby also talks in the same terms, that all-out war is not going to help Israel to bring its people back in the north.
You know, brother, the problem is not it's not the statements which they are giving to the public. The actual problem is that their actions are speaking louder than what they are expecting. They are luring billions of dollars of equivalent weapon to Israel and expecting Israel to not use. That's against the logic. That is against normal logic. So it's American government which is sponsoring the aggression of Israel directly because it's their own interest, not the American interest as a government, but American interest as a business and as a lobbies who are influencing the American politicians, and they cannot do any logical or moral decision against Israel because it's the Israeli lobbies which are funding American politicians, and those who go against even with the bipartisan, those who go against them, they will never survive in the political atmosphere in United States. So even the American president or American vice president or American Congress are helpless in front of the American lobbies, Israeli American lobbies, who are financing billions of dollars of weapons unconditionally to Israel when they know 110% that these weapons have been committed war crimes against the international law and against the American constitutional law. And there is no way that you can convince any normal human being, decent human being, that American decisions are based on a logical or based on interests of American foreign policy. It's all about the companies who are investing billions of dollars in the weapons and making the war millions of dollars back to their pockets.
So, Mr.
On the
Zaki,
other hand,
what I understand from your take is it regardless of who takes the power, the administration in the US, whether it be Democrats or the Republicans, but when we compare the last two administrations under Donald Trump and under Joe Biden, under which administration the situation in the Middle East had been at its worst?
Both of them have no choice. It's in the hands of the lobbies, and nobody can change. Not even American politicians, not even the Congress of America and the Senate. Both of them are helpless. It's the decision made by the American Israeli lobby, and this is what they want. Unless they change their mind, the American political party cannot change anything related to the Middle East. It's 100% in the hands.
What sort of weight does the public opinion in general in the United States of America, and that just before the elections in November, the presidential elections in November, how much weight does that public opinion? We've seen massive protests on campuses happening over there in the US, also outside the United Nations headquarters in New York also. So what sort of a weight does that carry when it comes to the policy making and implementation, specifically vis-a-vis in the wake of 7th of October, the kind of Israeli brutality? How much weight does that carry?
It have a lot of weight. The problem is that they are having choice of a tool of the war, and none of them will serve for the public interest. Definitely, it will affect the economics of the local economy of America. But when it came to the Gaza war against Israel, These have raised a lot of awareness into the young generations, and they are the actual forces who can change the direction of the American politics. Unfortunately, the both political parties, anyone they bring, will be subject to fulfill the interests of Israel, no matter what the public of Americans' interest is. Even if it's going to go directly against the interests of the American people, they will still be liable to just listen only what Israel and the Benjamin Netanyahu want is, because they are not independent political parties. They have been already taken their powers, and if they are in the buckets of the American lobbies and powerful lobbies who can kick them out anyone they want in the political atmosphere.
Right, Mr. Zaki. Now, by looking at this statement by U.S. Pentagon spokesperson Major General Patrick Ryder, he's warned Iran. We have seen after Ismail Haniyeh's assassination, also after Hassan Nasrallah's assassination, the resolve of vengeance on the top leadership of Iran. Now, a Pentagon spokesperson has warned Iran that if it's going to exploit the situation, is termed it that way, the US is going to take every necessary measure to defend its people. What does that actually depict? Do we understand from this that if that resolve is manifested in a practical action on the part of Iranians, there could be a possibility of Americans entering into the war directly here in the Middle East?
This is what Israel wanted, and this is what they are indicating, that the Biden administration is now giving directive threat, the same threat level that the Israeli government was given to Iran, and they want to drag down Iran into a Middle East conflict. I don't know what benefit they are going to get as an Israelis, but definitely they are going to cause a huge loss in American military bases in Iraq and in the Middle East, particularly in Arab countries. And that will affect directly every American military base in the Middle East if Iran is going to drag down into that conflict. Iran is trying to stay away this conflict as much as they can. They have been provocated a lot by Israelis attacking directly the Ismail Haniyeh inside the Tehran, and that was against the international law and the diplomatic protocol of the Vienna Convention. All that international law have been violated, but still Iran showed some restraint, and still Americans and Israelis are trying to provocate Iran so that the Middle East conflict could spread. That's going to serve only for the interests of Benjamin Netanyahu, not Israeli government, not Israeli people, not the future of the Israel. And also it's going to cause a huge cost for the American military bases in Middle East, particularly in Iraq. And that's going to make a huge war that can affect not only the Middle East, but beyond the Middle East.
I received your point well. I'll come back to you, Mr. Zaki, with one last question. I'll have to move to Dr. Afridi. Dr. Afridi, this statement, if Iran resorts to that reaction in the wake of these assassinations, this particular warning, is it stark warning? Do we understand there could be a possibility of the US directly becoming the part of this particular war in the Middle East?
I think United States will stay on this sideline. I mean, it will help Israel. It will continue its support for Israel, but it will stay aside, because then there will be not only loss for the United States, I mean materially, also diplomatically about the global standing of the US, but also it will have more harms to the interests of the US in the Middle East. So indirectly United States will try not only to support Israel in all its terms, but also to have more and more damage to Iran or other countries if they stand in the way of Israel or in the way of the United States.
Okay,
what I think.
Okay, so one last question. There has been a statement by Pope Francis saying that Israeli military attacks on Lebanon go beyond morality. Defense must always be proportionate to the attack. When there is something disproportionate, you see a tendency to dominate that goes beyond morality. War is immoral, but the rules of war give it some morality. So Israel's military actions in Lebanon have been declared as being immoral by Pope Francis. How significant that is?
It is a big slap on the face of the Israel and on the faces of the Israel supporters. And it reminds me one of the 6 points of Hans J. Margentoff, who was the US scholar of international politics. He has written a book, Politics Among Nations, Struggle for Power and Peace, first published in 1948. And in those 6 principles, one principle is that there is a difference between human morality, which is universal morality, and the state morality, right? So Pope Francis, he is pointing towards the universal, I mean the human morality, but what Israel is doing, that is just propagating, state morality. So state believes something else. State believes, the Israeli state believes in aggression. It believes in realism, right? So it believes in power politics. It has no regard for the human or universal morality.
Mr. Zaki, how significant is this statement by Pope Francis regarding Israel's military action in Lebanon being immoral? Saying war is immoral, but there are rules that make it give it some morality.
The shift of the support of European people, particularly the European young generations and futurists, are shifting pro-Israelis to pro-Palestinian, and or what we call the pro-humanity. So he's just representing the public opinion of the European people, so that he should show the Israelis crossing all the rules and regulations of the international war laws. But on the other hand, it shows that not only the politicians and the public figures of the European people and the university campuses protesting against the Israeli invasion in Gaza and Lebanon. Now it shows that even the religious leaders are against this conflict.
I have to cut you short over here. I'll have to end the show over here. Mr. Ahmad Zaki, Middle East expert, thank you very much for joining us on Skype. Dr. Manzoor Afridi, Foreign Affairs expert, thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Thank you. I really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.